All right, Bears fans, the NFL draft is in the books. We're going to hand out some grades on today's show, but we are on the road to 50,000 subscribers as we sit at 46,558 subs. We're just over 3,400 away. I want to get to 50K as soon as possible, and if you want more Bears news and rumors on a daily basis throughout the offseason, plus an undrafted free agent tracker video tomorrow, this is the time to subscribe. With that being said, let's recap the NFL draft and hand out some grades for the Bears. Welcome into Bears Now by Chat Sports. Harrison Graham here as the draft for 2022 has officially come to an end. Some players are starting to sign as undrafted free agents. We'll cover that tomorrow. For today, we're going to take a look at Ryan Poles' first draft class for Chicago. We'll hand out grades for every player and an overall grade for the Chicago Bears. Let's start in day 2 because no first-round pick for the Bears. Kyler Gordon, round 2, pick number 39, the cornerback out of Washington, who we've talked about a couple of times over the weekend since he got selected. A couple of interceptions last year for the Huskies, had 7 pass breakups as well. He stands at 5'11 and a half and 194 pounds. Good tackler, great athlete. I really like this pick for the Chicago Bears. I think he's a plug-and-play starter for Chicago this year. I told you guys yesterday, I'll continue to tell you guys, this was a really good pick. And I know we wanted to go receiver. We wanted to go offensive line here. But sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to when the draft plays out the way it did. But for Kyler Gordon, at the end of the day, I think it's a really good pick here, which is why I'm going to give it a really good grade coming up in just a moment. You look at the scouting report from our guy Tom Downey. Awesome athlete, really bouncy, tested very well, ran a 4.52 in the 40. He's got experience as a slot corner and at outside as well. The one knock, I guess, if you could have a knock on him, is limited-ish experience. His primary production came in 2022. Also had limited ball production as well. But he also wasn't targeted that much, so I'm not that concerned about that. I think he plugs in, he comes in right away, and he starts for this football team. I'll give this pick of Kyler Gordon an A. I think it's a really good pick here at round 2, pick number 39. I like Gordon out of Washington. He was a guy we talked about during a couple of mock drafts and a couple of pre-draft videos. I think he comes in and starts for this football team opposite of Jalen Johnson, and I think you feel pretty good about it if you are a fan of the Chicago Bears. Now, what is your favorite pick for the Bears so far this year? I want to hear it from you guys. Right now in the comments, I would probably go Kyler Gordon, but there were some other picks I liked as well, and we'll certainly break down those players throughout this video. Let me know in the comments, favorite pick by the Bears this year. Let's go round 2, pick number 48. That is Jaquan Brisker, the strong safety out of Penn State who can just flat out lay the wood and get your minds out of the gutter. I'm talking about knocking people's heads off on the football field. 6'1 and a half, over 200 pounds. Good tackler, like I mentioned. Couple of interceptions last year for the Nittany Lions. 5 pass breakups. I love his confidence and his swagger, too. He told Matt Eberflus after Eberflus called him, said, "You just got the steal of the draft." He believes in himself. I want my DBs and just defensive players as a whole to have that swagger, to have that confidence, leadership type of guy. He was the heart and soul of the Nittany Lions defense over the past couple of years. I am a big fan of Jaquan Brisker as well. I think he's going to fit in very well for the Chicago Bears. I'll give this pick an A-. It's not quite an A, only because of positional importance. You needed another safety, but there were bigger needs at the time. You could have gone George Pickens if you wanted to, but I still love the pick. Another starting caliber player, in my opinion, kind of like Kyler Gordon. So I don't think there's any harm whatsoever in going with Jaquan Brisker with this selection here at 48. Round 3, pick number 71, Velus Jones Jr. This was kind of the first curveball, the first abstract pick, if you will, by Ryan Poles that caught people's attention here during the NFL draft. interesting path in the NFL. He'll be 25 when this season starts. 6-year college player, started his career at USC, transfers to Tennessee. For the most part of his college career, he was mostly a special teams ace, but then his senior year has a really nice productive season for the Tennessee Volunteers. 62 catches, 807 yards, 7 touchdowns as well. I really like how he played for Tennessee this past season on tape, and I think what happened here, the reason they reached here is maybe they valued him in the 4th round, but they ended up not having a 4th round pick. So the Bears said, you know what, we like this player, we want to get Justin Fields a weapon, who, by the way, Ryan Poles said he watched tape of Velus Jones Jr. with Justin Fields, and that they both liked what they saw. So they're on the same page with this pick. Maybe it's a bit of a reach. We'll just have to wait and see what happens on that front. If I'm handing out a grade for Velus Jones Jr., I would give it a C+. I didn't love what I saw with this pick, only because I think he was more of a round 4, round 5 guy. I think it's a bit of a reach. I would have gone Jalen Tolbert, but it's a higher grade than I initially thought, and here's why. 4.3, 140. I watched the tape of him last night. He is an excellent return man. And if they use him properly out of the backfield some, which is what Ryan Poles said during his press conference, then that would be really, really smart and a good way to use him, because this is not a guy that's going to be able to run the full entire route tree for Chicago, at least not right away. But if you use him on go routes and quick slants and screens and stuff like that, limit the type of technical stuff he has to work on, then I think it can be a effective football player for your team. At worst, he's a really good kick and punt returner. Best day 2 pick. I want to hear it from you guys. Type KG for Kyler Gordon. Type JB for Jaquan Brisker. Type VJ for Velus Jones Jr. Get your votes in the comments. Best pick on day 2 was who for the Chicago Bears? I want to know before we shift to day 3, which turned into a trade fest for Ryan Poles. We'll hand out some grades for day 3 as well. Let's get to Braxton Jones at pick number 168. The Bears traded down from 148, from 150, from 166, and then they ended up picking an offensive lineman tackle out of Southern Utah with Braxton Jones here in round 5. 6'5", 310 pounds. He's got super long arms, which scouts and GMs and coaches love that with their offensive linemen. You always hear that, oh no, he's got short arms. Well, that's not the case here with Braxton Jones. Very, very long arms. But day 3 linemen, typically they're going to be somewhat of a project. Needs to get a little bit stronger up front, but I think there's some potential here to maybe at least get a swing tackle. Maybe a guy who starts one day. I don't think is a rookie though. I'll give this pick a B because number 1, it's day 3, and number 2, you need offensive linemen, right? And that'll be a theme here as we go along. A lot of offensive line picks for Ryan Poles here on day 3 of the NFL draft. And Braxton got things started, Braxton Jones, I should say, with that first 5th round pick. So I'll give that pick a B. We'll continue to hand out some grades here on this show as well. But I want to tell you guys about an app that we partnered with. We actually had our first live show on Saturday during the latter part of the 5th round and the 6th round of the draft. It's called the Call-In app. Chatsports.com/BearsCallin is where you can subscribe to us. Audio social podcasting app. It's basically Twitter Spaces on steroids. Way more user-friendly. It's got a live chat. It's a lot easier to use. Plus, after the live show ends, I can republish it as a podcast, and other people who weren't able to tune in live can listen. We're going to go live every single week. It's your chance to call in and connect with me as the host. I want to hear from you guys. A lot of good questions that we got during our first live show earlier on Saturday. I like the connection, the interaction between host and fans, because we get to do these live chat shows with you guys here on YouTube, but I don't get to hear your guys' voices. I'll be able to do that with Call-In. And you can go discover and find new shows as well. There's a lot of good content creators over there. Chatsports.com/BearsCallin. I'll have that link in the comments and in the description. That way you guys can join in on the fun and subscribe today. Let's go to the next pick for the Bears. That's Dominique Robinson out of Miami of Ohio. Tom Downey's alma mater. He loved this pick, and even if he's a little biased, I actually agree with him because, a lot of you guys are like, oh, why a defensive end? Well, you traded Khalil Mack. I don't think Robert Quinn's a long-term piece. You need some guys that you can develop and at least turn into rotational players. And I think Robinson has the tools to do that at almost 6'5", 253 pounds. Played some outside back or two in college. He's able to drop into coverage if you need him to. 4.5 sacks at 8.5 tackles for loss. Needs some technique work, needs to build some strength, but I give it a B grade. I think it fills a kind of a secondary need, if you will. Not a primary need, but a secondary need, and it's a fun developmental player that I thought might have gone in the 4th round. You're able to get him in round 5. I think the value is proper there for Robinson, so I like this pick. I like this pick for Ryan Poles. I think other than a couple of reaches, he found some good value in this draft, and I liked his strategy on day 3 of trading back and throwing more darts and seeing if he can hit a couple of bullseyes here in the final rounds. Next up is Zach Thomas, round 6, number 186, the offensive lineman out of San Diego State. A lot of linemen here on day 3, 6'5", 308 pounds, so similar size to the last lineman we talked about. His brother Cam Thomas was actually the edge rusher in this class out of San Diego State as well. A lot of experience. He'll be 24, got a lot of playing time at 3 different positions in college, so he's a versatile player. And if you're a lineman on day 3 in the draft, versatility goes a long way. And that versatility is why I'll give this a B grade. I think he could compete at guard. A lot of people had him as a guy who mostly played tackle in college, but that probably projects as a guard in the NFL, but could play both spots in a pinch if needed to. There's going to be a lot of competition on this offensive line in camp. I still think there's a good chance that the Bears will sign a veteran like an Eric Fisher or a Trey Turner, get one more stable body on that starting offensive line. But even if they do or even if they don't, there's going to be competition not only in that starting lineup, but also for those backup spots as well. And I love competition. Nothing should be given in the NFL, especially for a team that went 6-11 last season. What is the Bears' biggest need after the draft? Now that the draft is over, what is the position group they need to focus on the most? I would still like to sign, like I said, a proven offensive lineman to give you a little bit more stability for Justin Fields. But maybe you think it's another position. You could add another receiver as well. Get your votes in down in the comments. A couple more players here. Trestan Ebner, the running back out of Baylor, who I watched quite a bit, played for 5 seasons down in Waco, Texas. 800 rushing yards, couple of touchdowns last year. His overall career numbers as a rusher and a receiver, over 1,600 rushing yards, over 1,500 receiving yards. They threw a ton to him out of the backfield. Versatile. He's a kick returner as well. 20 total touchdowns in his college career as a rusher and as a receiver. Also 4 return touchdowns for Trestan Ebner. He can do a little bit of everything. And look, Ryan Poles told us that he might go out and draft a running back. Well, once you traded down and got the extra picks, you had the capital to do so. C+, because it's not a major need, but it's an above-average pick for me because I like the player, and I think he can come in and compete for a roster spot. Maybe he gives you some return ability as well. Maybe Khalil Herbert doesn't return kicks at all this year. If Velus Jones is one of your kick returners, maybe Ebner's your other one, and then Jones is also your punt returner. C+ for this one. Not as nearly as big of a need as some other positions, but still a quality player in round 6. Doug Kramer, back to the offensive line we go. He grew up a Bears fan, grew up in the state of Illinois, center out of the Fighting Illini. I think what'll come down to him if he works out or not in the NFL is, does he have some guard flexibility? Now, he started 47 games at Illinois. A lot of starting experience in the Big Ten. That matters. But he's a little light. Honestly, his draft profile is kind of similar to Sam Mustipher. A lot of experience, a lot of playing time, smart player. Is he strong enough to play in the NFL? Probably needs to get stronger. B-. Any offensive lineman on day 3 was going to get a B- or higher because this team needs offensive linemen both in the starting lineup and on depth. But I question positional versatility and strength for Kramer. He's going to work hard. He's a work ethic guy. I'm not concerned about that. Does he have the upper body strength to last in the NFL? We'll see. That was certainly a big question mark for Sam Mustipher. J. Tyre Carter is next up here, the offensive tackle out of Southern. Like I said, big theme here on day 3, 6'3.5", 311 pounds. No sacks allowed. Played at the HBCU down there. And, we'll see. A lot of these guys, for a couple of them, I had seen some film work. For some other guys, I had not seen a lot of film work. And for Carter, I hadn't seen a ton, but didn't give up a sack last year, so I like that. By the way, out of White Castle, Louisiana, elite hometown name there. B- here for J. Tyler Carter. All offensive linemen B- or higher with these picks, because it's day 3. It's hard to have a bad grade, and you need offensive linemen, like we continue to preach here on Chicago Bears Now. So no problem with throwing all these darts at linemen. Hey, you picked about 5 of them. If 1 or 2 hit on day 3, that's probably about the hit rate in the 4th through 7th round anyway. All right, Elijah Hicks, a safety out of California. Decent production, 3 interceptions, 2 pass breakups. I don't know if you necessarily needed another defensive back. That's why I'm going to give it a C. But maybe Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus look at this and is like, okay, we think he projects right away as a contributor on special teams, and maybe they liked, the long-term potential as, a backup safety or something like that. DeAndre Houston Carson, Dane Cruikshank on 1-year contracts. Maybe he's a practice squad guy at the end of the day that they get to see up close. They didn't have to risk having to sign him as a UDFA. I don't have a problem with that. Decent athlete. We'll see if he can develop. And then, yes, the Bears drafted a punter out of NC State. Averaged over 45 yards per punt, actually, this year. 65 long. We were kind of hoping that Matt Araiza would be the pick here, but that did not be the case. But one of the better punters in the draft, and you needed a punter. He'll probably start if he's a starter. Doesn't it have to be at least in the Bs? B-. He might start for you. You got another punter on the roster. His name keeps blaming me because he's the punter, and it's not Pat O'Donnell, so who cares? B- if he makes the team and starts, it's probably an A. If you get a starter in the 7th round, doesn't it have to be an A grade? Time will tell. He'll have to earn that job in training camp. But there you go. That is the Bears 2022 draft. Ryan Poles loaded up on picks here in day 3 after several trades, and now we get to see these guys compete very quick. Rookie minicamp coming up, OTAs, and then, of course, the real deal later in July and into August. All right, grade the Bears draft as a whole for 2022. It is over. It is done. Now we get to see what happens on the undrafted free agency market. A, B, C, D, or F. Give me a grade for the Bears in this 2022 draft. And, hey, Ryan Poles, I think a job pretty well done overall for Chicago. I am going to give the Bears as a whole a B. I'm going to give it a B grade for Chicago. There were a couple times where I was like, maybe they reached here. Maybe they could have gone this player there. But I think you got 2 surefire starters with your first 2 picks. And that was my goal. I wanted to get starters on day 2. We'll see if Velus Jones ends up being that. But at the end of the day, B overall grade for Chicago. I think Ryan Poles did a pretty good job. And I'm sure he has a lot that he's able to learn from for future drafts, as this is his first time being fully in charge. Appreciate you guys for watching. Please subscribe. The road to 50,000 subscribers is here, trying to get there as soon as possible. So hit that big red button. We'll see you next time here on Bears Now.